Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio Leadership Podcast. Money Radio brings you the latest developments in Nigeria's business and economy cycles and issues of businesses around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today in today's Money Radio, we're going to look at how funding can help to develop research and development, a very key component of science, technology, and innovation. It will interest you to know that the Nigerian Minister of Science, Technology, and Innovation, Adeleke Mamora, met with media men yesterday. And in that parley, the minister was very much about soliciting for more funding to support this very important component of science, technology, and innovation, which is research and development. Now, all over the world, research and development requires a lot of funding. So many countries of the world, developed countries of the world, have actually put in their best in terms of getting serious funding. Some go to the extent of making extra budgetary allocations possible to be able to fund research into different sectors of the economy to improve STI, which is science, technology, and innovation. And so we're going to look at the idea of soliciting for funding for research and development to improve the science, technology, and innovation component of the Nigerian as a country in order to improve its drive for industrialization. And so, in that parley, the minister was quoted as saying, and let me read his quote, "Research activities require a lot of funding, and there has to be a way that funding is possible, to make funding possible. The African Union has set up a 2% of GDP for member countries for R&D, and the truth is that until and unless we give priority to R&D, it will be difficult for us to get to where we want to be in terms of socioeconomic development. We need R&D to move forward." End of quote. Now, this is very, very significant in terms of the expression and declaration of intent to improve this all-important sector by funding a very great component like R&D. So we are going to discuss more on the variables required to push forward and, of course, to get the refunding and whether we have prospects in areas that we are looking for the funding to support research and development in order to improve our drive for industrialization. I will take a short break. When we return, my guest will join me as we move on to discuss further on the way forward on this very important segment. Don't go away.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, you're on to Money Radio on Leadership Podcast, and we're discussing funding, research, and development as a key component of science, technology, and innovation to drive Nigeria's industrialization forward. And now being joined by my guest, who is an expert in ICT and other science, technology, and innovation-related matters. In the studio, we have Hanel Jafaru. Hanel, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure having you.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, we are talking R&D again. And of course, you know that this is a very important component when you talk about science, technology, and innovation. We also talk about ICT. Many private firms and the public organizations also are trying to liaise, work together to ensure that they improve science. They improve R&D. And of course, you know that R&D, like you've always said, is not an easy job. So it requires a lot of funding and many other variables that will define it. So where do we go from here now that the government, through the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, seem to have woken up and are actually trying to solicit for extra budgetary funding for this important component?
Well, I would say it's a good step that at least now the minister is now trying to see how they can get more funds for R&D. But beyond the funds, there are different stages to R&D. The first thing you need to take note of in R&D is you need to have the human capital. That's the intellectual capital for those that will drive this research. If the funds, working with the assumption that the funds are approved, do we have the human capital to drive this research and development? Even if we have, in what area do we have this human capital? Which industry do we have them more? Are our academic system, are they producing enough materials that can drive research? These are some of the fundamental questions that should be asked. Why I'm not neglecting the place of funding, which is very paramount and very important in the process of research and development. The place of human capital can also not be overemphasized. We need to ensure that we have the human capacity to drive this research. If we are moving into the fourth industrial revolution that focuses on digitalization, it invariably means that whatsoever human capital development that we'll be doing should be in line with that fourth industrial revolution. In Nigeria, how many institutions are offering AI, that's artificial intelligence, as a bachelor's degree course? How many institutions are offering virtual reality as a bachelor degree course? These are things that we should begin to look out for, because you can't get research for now. You begin to research for SIM card that is not needed again, because eSIM is coming to take over the place of SIM card. So we need to be ahead and beyond. We need to be ahead in the place of research and not being obsolete. We need to be proactive and not being reactive. Once we put in all these necessary, we've been able to effectively answer all these fundamental questions. Then when the fund comes in, we know that, okay, the funds would not just ease the implementation.
Okay, there's one other fundamental issue that was discussed at that parley yesterday, which is, of course, that, yes, funding constraints have hampered some of the many efforts that the government might be doing, might be making rather, to ensure that we achieve this objective. Like, for instance, Nigeria had actually committed 0.5% of its GDP to science, to R&D. Yes, even though that might be an improvement from previous years, that definitely cannot be enough because of the kind of projects that we have at hand. Now, the African Union also set a standard of 2% of the GDP for member countries to be committed into research and development. Now, Nigeria hasn't even met the standard. I don't think any other country, maybe a few, had actually met that standard. So if we really want to grow in terms of STI and drive industrialization, is it not possible that we actually raise the bar, at least get to the 2% standard set by African Union?
That was the benchmark. That means you can even exceed it.
Yes.
So that you are not even meeting the benchmark. It's a concern. It would be good if we can meet the benchmark. But again, we need to, beyond just meeting the benchmark, I'm more particular about the fact that you don't attend to A and leave B, knowing fully well that A and B is what make up the equation. You don't attend to one and leave two, knowing fully well that 1 + 2 will give you 3. So it goes beyond just the funding. It's very important that we address the area of the funding. The funding has always been an issue to Nigerian situations. Talking about implementation of projects and all that, funding of research institutes and all that. It has always been an issue, but again, must it come from the purse of the government? How about we design things in line with private research?
Yes.
Policies that tend to encourage private organizations for creating an R&D department that would also push the research arm of the country. We don't have policies that encourages research from the private sector. Now the public sector that want to undergo that research is having the challenge of funding. But beyond that, both the private and the public sector, there is a challenge of human capital development. So why don't we strategically look at all this issue and design a system that can be implemented easily, looking at it from the perspective of the private sector, the public sector, and also how we can ensure that we develop the human capital development.
Okay. You talk so much about this human capital, and it's very critical in this sector. Now, one may ask, what exactly is wrong with the Nigerian human capital? For instance, you have research institutes all over the country. I can name a few of them. You also have universities that are dedicated to certain kind of research, and they also have their own research institutes. Now, does it mean that these human capital, components that we have cannot be activated and then linked to a central system that can, be whole enough to give us that desired push to do research that is in the modern time and not obsolete research, like you said? So, putting all this human capital together, don't you think we already have human capital? Maybe there's something that is not adding up.
Let's start from the fact that our graduates are trained with the mindset of coming out of school to get a job. Yeah. There are people who are trained. In fact, 50% of those that went further to take masters, the reason they took that master is to have advantage over those who are BSc holder, who are BSc holders, in the place of seeking for a job. Yes. So how many of those decide to undergo research? Then if you now want to go further to look at the PhD students, most of the PhD students or PhD graduates that we have in Nigeria, let me not generalize, but you get a good number of them who just want to be referred to as doctors. So the foundational reason why we even do research, looking at the fact that even in your bachelor's degree, you present a research topic, you do your research defense. In your master's degree, there's been your master's thesis. In your doctorate degree, it's research focused. These were things that were built in the system to ensure that we are research driven. But the passage of time has redesigned all these things to ensure that is no longer our focus. We produce graduates that don't see the importance of research. If you want to do we have a research archive in the country where all the research that has been done by everybody? Yesterday I was listening to an interview where the director of All School, the founder of All School Africa, was saying that every year we produce over 600,000 graduates. Yet now this 600,000 graduates, each one of them produced a research topic. What was the research all about? Do we have an archive system that puts all the research together to know if there is duplicate? Do you have a research system that ensures that we are able to, there is a problem in the research that a master student can take a thesis or get a problem statement from the research topics that has been identified, the research problem that has been identified in the bachelor's degree research? Do we have all those kind of systems? Yet the reason we don't have all those kind of systems, the reason we don't have all those kind of systems because we don't have an archiving system, a research archiving system that tends to bring all the research together. The universities are expected, they are supposed to be research driven, but they have moved away from their fundamental focus and they are now focused on producing graduates. You get what? Produce graduates that have the intellectual capacity to take this research. There are people that live on research. I always talk about the fact that what is our patenting system? There are so many structures that needs to be put in place before we even talk about finances, that the government, policies that the government needs to put in place before we even talk about finance or the funding. What is our patenting structure like? What if I let's say I work on a research and that research tends to be a global solution and I patent it in Nigeria? What is the level, what is the weight of the patenting when it is patented in Nigeria compared to when it is patented abroad? Can I patent something in Nigeria today and somebody patent its own in, let's say, UK or US tomorrow, and its own will be more relevant than mine, even though they are the same problem, they are solving the same problem? These are some of the questions we should ask. These are some of the questions we should ask. Before we're not talking about funding that will now bring about the research equipment, the survey, all the necessary tools that aid, because the fund would only aid in carrying out the research, but the intellectual capacity is needed before you talk about any research thing.
Well, that's a very interesting aspect. The intellectual capacity has to be improved truly even before the funding comes. And because sometimes the people who may offer funding, who may give the funding, would also like to take a look at what they are funding.
Exactly.
Whether that aspect will bring them the necessary, because they're also investing in the research and development.
It is an investment. It's a long-term
investment that they're also willing to recoup from. And so if you don't see any sign that there was going to be anything positive from this, that might not be available. Now, let me give you an example of why research is very important, like you and I have always maintained. Microsoft, for instance, I understand that they spend over $40 billion annually encouraging research. Now, you can see that how many African countries in their budgets, can boast of $40 billion budgets annually? How many African countries? So you can see a company as big and as rich as Microsoft is actually expanding the basis for more research, because it benefits from research work of experts like you, who have actually been detailed to provide something new, to produce something better, and to redesign something that the world can see in a better way. So that tells you how important research has been for companies and for countries. I know of China, they also invest so much in research and development. India, they do the same, especially in the ICT sector. So every country, any country that is serious about developing its STI and driving industrialization must pay attention to the issue of research and development. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. There are efforts being made in Nigeria, however, to ensure that at least we break the gap in some way. Even though there are so much constraints, let us at least be running the race, even though slowly, maybe like a snail speed. But the world already has gone smart. Smartphones, smart this, even smart everything that you can think of. So even smart R&D. So the question is, if the government, for instance, that is soliciting for this funding, they talked about also collaborating with the ECOWAS Commission. They had a meeting they call Forum for Africa Research and Innovation. That's FARI for short, where the African stakeholders actually use that platform to collaborate on how to develop research and development, and of course the entire STI. Good development, but there is still constraint. The organization of that system, of that particular platform, might just be another area of competition among African countries, even though there are some level of collaboration, there might be competition. So things like this, how do you really feel that?
See, the best now you made mention of Microsoft.
Yes.
Take note, Microsoft is a private company, and we have good private companies in Nigeria that are huge, that can be mandated to do research.
Mandated, all right. I like that word.
They should be mandated to do research. Everything we experience today or we use today came out was birthed from in the place of research.
Yeah.
So if they are mandated, even though they don't like it, but because they are mandated to do it, they would have to do it. And doing it would mean that they will bring forth a product. Yeah. And the product will not just be, it will eventually become a made in Nigerian product to the world. Yet, if Microsoft as a company is spending $40 billion on the research, and that is just one company. We've not talked about Google, that's also a US-based company. We've not talked about Amazon. We've not talked about, before we won't talk about the government of the United States itself, the amount it spends on research. Bringing all that together, bringing all that money together, they would always be more advanced than us. If you encourage your private sector, mandate these guys, let you do. This was the same strategy that Germany engaged in the 60s when they were, was in the 60s and the 40s when they were world power. This was the same strategy that they engaged. Encouraging private, not encouraging, mandating. But in the place of mandate, while they were mandating them, they were also encouraging them. Take research and come up with an exhibition center where you will display the product of your research. Now you will see government agencies of other countries now coming to see what you are giving birth in the place of research, what you've bettered in the place of research. And when they come and they see things that is interested to them, they pick it and take it to their country. Now it's not an exported knowledge. So even though the forum comes and they want, it's just a place where individually, as a country, encourage your people to do research. When you have a research platform, there is place for exhibition. We would all come to see what you have done. So the competition should not be in the place of researching, in the place of competing against the product, but against the country itself. This country was able to exhibit 10 powerful research during their time. Now, Nigeria is exhibiting 20 powerful research. Next year, when Ghana would beat Nigeria, will exhibit 30. Now, before you know what's happening, Africa as a continent is exhibiting over 150 research products. You get, so let it not be in the place of the research product itself, but in the place of the quantity of the research, the quantity and the quality of the research.
That's very interesting. And I think it's for that reason that the ECOWAS Commission actually took it upon itself to make it as a bigger platform, a bigger structure. Since some countries within the sub-region are actually struggling to fit in, struggling to also raise GDP required to, drive funding. The commission had, in fact, actually taken over and see whether they can also expand it by liaising with other international agencies and also the private sector that you mentioned to be able to key into the process so that this particular product or this particular research and development objective that we're all looking at are realized. So, but then we talk so much about trying to harness things and put this together in the country and in the continent. Yet, most of these things sometimes usually end up in the seminars, workshops, and all kinds of things. So the concrete thing that we look forward to may just be, not available at the time that we want it. How do you think we can resolve this problem?
The reason is simple. If you have a leader that does not understand the importance of research, most of this topic will always end up as talks. They will always end up as paperwork. But if you have a leader that understands the place of research in development, that's going to be a priority. Now, 2011, we encountered flood issues in this country as a result of what? Global warming. What did we do about that? It's a problem. It's a problem. What did we do about that? One of the challenges of global warming is gas emission. And we are so, unfortunately, it's part of our lifestyle, starting from the cooking gas to the charcoal gas to the burnt fuel and diesel, and the bad engines that our car, gas that our car emits as a result of bad engine. All these things causes global warming. And Nigeria is a major country. It's one of the country, in fact, if not among the highest country that emits. Outside the energy sector, the big energy, this energy sector. I'm talking about the local, down to the rural environment. We are emitting a whole lot of gas, bad gas to the air that is causing global warming. So, what research have we taken to ensure that we reduce it? What research have we taken? Now it came back again in 2022. From 11 years after, the same problem you encountered repeated itself.
All right, we can talk this. We can talk this over and over again because it has become a central point of discussion in any important forum of Nigeria. And so we will continue to interrogate all the issues and the variables surrounding science, technology, and innovation. And of course, the very important component of it, which is research and development. It's on that note that we'll end today's edition of Money Radio on today's leadership podcast. I've been in the studio with our guest, Hania Jafar. Hania, thank you so much once again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I will promise to bring you a bumper edition of Money Radio when next week comes. Stay blessed and thank you.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.